Okay, guys, so that's the end of Happy's list. However, there are a few more movies that I'd like to talk about, so let's jump right back into it. Starting this is Sully. Now, Sully was the latest Clint Eastwood movie, and I know there is some people on the fence about this one. I know that people who saw it enjoyed it, but some did more than others. I would say I'm somewhat in between. I really, really liked it. I don't know if I extremely loved it. It had a lot of charm and a lot of intrigue to it. However, this is a movie that I wouldn't see myself going back to time and time again. There is some great acting. As always, Tom Hanks gives a great performance, but the other actors in there as well did a fair job. However, he was definitely the shining star of this movie. So Clint Eastwood is a director that some people are kind of divided on. I know some people really enjoy his movies. Some people really aren't the fondest of it. I guess they don't think they're bad movies. They're just not the greatest fans. I think I'm somewhere in between. I haven't seen all of his movies, but from what I've seen, I do enjoy of him. I think he's a very competent director. Um, but yeah, with Sully, I think he turned out something pretty great. I enjoyed Sully for what it was. Kind of, I think having the knowledge of the events, I knew very little about the events that surrounded this movie. So I think knowing a bit more would have been more beneficial. Like I heard a lot of people saying that they knew what was going on, but they didn't know everything that went into it. They didn't know the details. They knew only what they saw on the news or wherever they had gained information. So seeing this movie was kind of an eye opener for a lot of people, me especially, as I knew very little about the actual events surrounding the movie. So yeah, Sully was good. I enjoyed it pretty well. So this next movie on here is Florence Foster Jenkins. Now, this movie was good. It was about Meryl Streep and she can't sing. That's pretty much as simply as I can put it. Hugh Grant gave a great performance in this movie. I think he was personally my favorite part of this movie. However, Meryl Streep and what's his name? The guy from the Big Bang Theory. Yeah, that's what I've really only seen him in. He did a surprisingly good job too. Great performances all across the board. It was an interesting tale, something different in the music genre that we haven't really seen as far as movies are concerned. So yeah, I liked it. Okay, this next movie is Don't Breathe. Now, I liked Don't Breathe quite a lot. I'm not a huge horror movie guy. I've been getting into horror a little bit more as of recent. However, I wouldn't consider myself a huge fan. This movie, however, was very creative, very, very entertaining, and just inventive. Yeah, with all its camera work, it really set out the layout of the setting that the movie pretty much takes place in throughout the entire runtime. So that was really interesting. It had me on the edge of my seat pretty much the whole time. The only complaint I had with it was that me and my friend were seated next to some very, very annoying moviegoers. So that would really be the only thing I could change. Because if there's anything worse than sitting through a movie with an annoying person, it's sitting through a horror movie with an annoying person. So I think you all know what I mean by that. But moving on is Hush, which was another horror movie I saw. I think only I saw those two horror movies. I think those are, you could say 10 Cloverfield Lane is somewhat of a horror movie, but I'd consider it more of a thriller. So Hush is basically the story of a deaf woman who is living alone in the forest and is confronted by a home invader. And basically, he's a masked man. Okay, cut. 3, 2, 1, action. So Hush tells the story of a deaf woman who is intruded by a home invader, who is a masked man who comes to grow an interest for the deaf woman and kind of slowly stalks her. It's an unsettling movie. However, what I liked about it was that they took a kind of a concept that has been done to death at this point. Home invasion movies are nothing new. However, they put a little spin on it, and the kind of the disorder that the main character has, or the disability, isn't really a weakness in the movie. In fact, it's actually used to her advantage in several scenes of the movie, which I really liked. She's not really a vulnerable character. Yes, she is deaf. She has that disability. However, she uses it to her advantage as kind of leverage over the antagonist of the film. So I really enjoyed that. Hush was a pretty effective horror movie. Coming up next is Deepwater Horizon. Now, I like Deepwater Horizon quite a bit. It was pretty effective in what it was trying to do. Basically, tell the events in a narrative fashion, kind of inform people about this oil rig explosion that happened not too long ago relating to the company of BP. So, this movie was good. I like the acting all across the board. Mark Wahlberg gave a good performance. However, I think the shining star, without a doubt, was Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell is an actor who I really like. Seems like, though he's passed through several generations of film, he never gets old. His performances remain consistently entertaining, and this was no exception. I really liked Deepwater Horizon. Now, coming up next is Patriots Day, which is another Peter Berg film. He did this and Deepwater Horizon in the same year, so he was on the ball. I think he only wrote for Deepwater Horizon. I think he only directed Patriots Day. However, he wrote and directed Deepwater. But anyways, for Patriots Day, I enjoyed this film quite a bit. I think, if I could say honestly, I'm not sure which of the two I like. They're very similar. They both star Mark Wahlberg. They're doing a very similar thing. They're trying to inform people about an event while kind of maybe explaining, the filmmakers are explaining their own personal opinions on the matter without doing it in a forced propaganda type way. It's more like, this is what happened, and here's a little bit of what we reflected from it. So I liked how they did that. They didn't really force feed you their opinions. They kind of just spoon-fed it, I guess, if that makes sense. They're kind of like, here's what happened, and here's how we reacted to it. And what I really like about Patriots Day is it shows the unity of this city that has to come together and find these culprits of the Boston bombing. Now, the Boston bombing was fresh in people's minds when this movie came out, which I thought was interesting. Normally, movies based on true events or true tragedies, especially like this, give the material to some time to kind of soothe out a bit. It's still obviously very fresh in people's minds. So the act of making a movie about this topic was pretty gutsy on their part. However, it felt completely respected the whole time. It never felt forced. It never felt disrespectful to the true events that happened all not that long ago. And it really kind of, like, again, Deepwater Horizon, I knew the events and I knew what happened. However, I didn't know how they played out. And it was similar to Sully, too. I think I had talked about that a bit. I didn't know all the details. I didn't know how long it took for them to catch these guys. And it was a really interesting movie. I liked the unity. I liked the performances. It was a good movie. Okay, coming up next is Hacksaw Ridge. Now, I really enjoyed Hacksaw Ridge. Andrew Garfield, I think, while I don't like him as Spider-Man particularly, I do enjoy him as an actor. He's a very gifted actor. I think he's proved that time and time again by now. And he gives yet another compelling performance here. Maybe the best I've seen of him. I know he's up for an Oscar for this one, and it's very well deserving. Mel Gibson comes back to direct for this film, and he does a pretty stellar job. The man knows how to direct a movie. I would say my only complaint would be that the beginning was a little cheesy. However, I felt like that was intentional as kind of a way of easing the audience into the more graphic war sections, because they are graphic scenes. However, the movie was very enjoyable, and I really like the message and the story that it told overall. It revolves around a man who refuses to use a firearm because of his beliefs, and whether or not you agree with him or his beliefs doesn't really matter, because you can respect him as a person and what he's trying to accomplish. So overall, a very good movie. Okay, coming up next is Me Before You. Now, this was a movie I saw pretty early into the year. It's about a paralyzed man who falls in love with his caretaker, but is kind of faced with the emotional and mental struggles that come along with his condition. So this movie was very well done. I know there was surprisingly some controversy around this movie, and yes, the subject matter that it deals with is controversial, but I felt like they handled it really well. I won't give away what that material is in case of spoilers. However, I personally thought that the way that they handled the ending and what went with it was handled well and respectfully. It never felt like they were using it as a plot device per se, or really anything less than a character's choice. So Yeah, it is a touchy subject. However, I personally thought that they did a good job with it. It was an entertaining movie. I loved the performances. I thought the two main actors had great chemistry, and they turned out a pretty good movie. So, coming up next is The Infiltrator, starring Bryan Cranston. Now, Bryan Cranston, in my opinion, is one of the greatest actors currently working in Hollywood. Now, I love Breaking Bad. It is my favorite show of all time. It's no secret if you know me. I love it. Bryan Cranston is one of the sole reasons for that love, and he turns out yet another good performance time and time again. The Infiltrator, he was my favorite part of. He gave a really good performance, and I think without him, the movie kind of stumbles a bit. I don't think it's a bad movie. It's kind of a formulaic movie with a standard plot. It was well delivered for the most part. However, I do think the movie stands on the shoulders of Bryan Cranston. Now, X-Men Apocalypse I talked about. This one is a lesser known one. It's a Woody Allen film called Cafe Society. Now, the only reason I saw this film was because I happened to walk by in the video store, and yes, again, those still exist. But I saw this movie that had a pretty unique poster. It was a unique design. I was like, maybe that's interesting. I saw that Jesse Eisenberg and Kristen Stewart were in it. I like them both in Adventureland, so I thought, hey, might as well give it a try. I picked it up, and I thought it was okay. Overall, I think the movie was lacking a bit as far as a good ending goes, or a more impactful ending, and a more impactful emotional feeling overall. I could have gone for a more well thought out ending. The movie is fine and it's entertaining all the way through. I would, however, cut down the runtime because it gets pretty lengthy, unnecessarily so. And also, I would work on the ending a bit more because the movie doesn't really come to a conclusion, it just kind of ends. And yeah, that can be a problem, especially with a movie like this, with all the rising action, a lot of loose ends not being tied, and overall, it was a good movie, but I wouldn't say it's one of Woody Allen's best. Now, this next movie is 13 Hours: The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. Now, this is a Michael Bay film. I liked it quite a bit. I do think Michael Bay is a director who doesn't have the most self-control. He doesn't have the most restraint while making a movie. However, this is a prime example of how he has the ability to restrain himself. I did like Secret Soldier of Benghazi. The action sequences were handled pretty well. I kind of like the characters. I think the biggest problem is the characters and the acting, especially from the characters' family, just pretty much all of them in general. There was one that was really bad. There was actually a scene that made me and my family laugh pretty hard. There's this one of the soldiers' wives is on the phone with him, and she's at McDonald's, and she's like ordering chicken nuggets or something, and she just breaks down. She's like, 10 piece, I want the 10 piece, and it was really ham-fisted, and I was like, really? That was the only take you guys had? So, stuff like that. And then a lot of the characters weren't painted like real people. They were more painted like heroes. And yes, the soldiers and our military are heroes. However, you would respect them more if they were given a more human quality to them. And I don't think that this movie always did that. Now, it did it towards the end a bit more. However, there wasn't enough build up to their characters to really, really have that emotional, gut-wrenching feeling when the movie ended. But overall, it was a decent movie, and I hope that Michael Bay continues to... Oh, wait, never mind. There's a Transformers 5 coming out. Okay, moving on. War Dogs. This was a very entertaining movie. I liked War Dogs quite a bit. It stars Miles Teller and... what's his name? Miles Teller and Jonah Hill. Why couldn't I think of it? Miles Teller and Jonah Hill, and they have pretty good chemistry. Basically, the whole movie is them kind of getting mad at each other. They get along for a while, but then towards the end, they start to have conflicting views. And this is actually a real story about two teenage arm dealers who seriously made quite a bit of money, but did it illegally so. And it kind of shows Miles Teller's character and his reaction to the illegal activities that they're pursuing in, and how he kind of begins to grow a disdain towards Jonah Hill's character. I like this movie a lot. It had a good soundtrack. I enjoy the cinematography that this director, I forget his name, he did the Hangover movies, but I enjoy the cinematography in his movies. He's really good at doing some depth of field stuff, especially in wide open spaces. This movie, I feel like he did it best in. He turned out two good performances from Miles Teller and Jonah Hill, and it was a pretty entertaining story. Okay, now this next one is Race. This movie is about I forget his name, but he was a black man who was in the Olympics during a time of racial division in our country. Now, this movie was very interesting. I found it to be very similar to the movie 42 that came out, in the fact that it deals with race, yes. The emotional moments for the most part hit. However, there are definitely some parts of cheese in both of these movies, where the score becomes very triumphant, and there's a lot of kind of almost overly dramatized moments. However, for the most part, I think this movie handled its emotional, dramatic moments very well. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. I enjoyed the main performance, and the stakes, especially towards the end, are very high, and you feel the pressure being put on the main character, especially in the third act. The stakes become very real, very relatable, and I thought this was an important story to be told, so I liked it quite a bit. Now, the final movie I saw, we're going out with a doozy here, was called Lady in the Van. Now, this was a smaller film that I actually had forgotten about until I was doing some research on the movies of 2016 and happened to stumble upon it. I saw this movie very early on. I think it came out in February or maybe March, something like that. But first of all, the good. It had decent direction. I think whatever they were trying to tell, what story they were trying to tell, they accomplished for the most part. I understood what was going on. I liked Maggie Smith. She's a very good actress. However, the main problem with this movie is Maggie Smith's character, which isn't really her problem. She gave a fine performance. However, her character is so overwhelmingly selfish and so ungrateful, and there's no really big character arc. You learn a bit more about her, but you don't really find that her acts are justified. At least I didn't. I thought she was pretty ungrateful and selfish. Just came off as a kind of mean-spirited, unlikable person. And this is one of our main characters of the film. I liked the male main character of the movie. I forget his name. He gave a decent performance, and he had somewhat of a character arc. However, the scenes with Maggie Smith's character became so unbearable that it weighed the movie down extremely, which was a shame because I do like Maggie Smith as an actress. Just the character she was given to portray was, in my opinion, bad. So that pretty much wraps up all the movies I have to talk about. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're still here, you deserve a medal because I'm pretty sure we're like at the 3-hour mark by this point. But it was great having my good friend Happy on here. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I hope this is something that I could maybe do in the future if I have the time. Again, this took me quite a while to do. A lot of time has passed. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. This was the season finale of the Nerd Theater. If you hadn't noticed, we have reached episode 10, and I hope that we have even more fun in episode 11. So thank you guys again for watching, and until next time, stay tuned, you guys.